At exactly 7:48 on a Friday evening, Isabella Moreno stepped out of her cab into the sprawling courtyard of the LaVelle estate. Her heels clicking against marble tiles slick with an earlier drizzle, the kind of rain that smelled faintly of roses and impending secrets. The house was a modern fortress of glass and steel, lit from within in ways that made it seem less like a home and more like a stage. She adjusted the strap of her clutch nervously, straightening the neckline of her dress, trying to ignore the tiny tremor in her hands. She had been warned about attending Mr. Adrian LaVelle's private gathering. She had been told countless times by friends that it was exclusive, unattainable, intimidating, but nothing could prepare her for the sheer presence of the man himself. Even before she met him, rumors followed him like shadows. The billionaire who never smiled, the recluse whose eyes could unsettle even seasoned CEOs, the man who built empires from technology, oil, and whispers of influence, yet whose personal life was as locked down as his boardrooms. And Isabella, a freelance luxury journalist who had spent her 20s writing about other people's glamour, was about to step into a world where she would be judged, measured, and possibly discarded before the first cocktail was poured. Adrian emerged from the inner hall moments later, his presence so commanding it felt like gravity shifted around him. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a midnight blue suit that whispered of bespoke tailoring, the kind of suit that seemed to have been constructed to fit him perfectly as if reality itself had bent to his proportions. His hair, dark and slightly tousled, framed a face that could have belonged on a magazine cover. But the sharpness of his cheekbones and the intensity of his gaze reminded anyone observing that he was not a figure of fantasy, he was a force. He did not smile, not fully, not yet. He extended a hand in greeting, and Isabella, feeling the weight of his gaze as if it could peer straight into her intentions, shook it, feeling a current she could not name surge through her. The room buzzed with conversation around them, a blend of investors, artists, and socialites who murmured their respect and envy quietly. Yet she could not hear any of it. Her world had narrowed down to the aura of a man who radiated both danger and control in equal measure. The rule, she would soon learn, was not a suggestion. It was carved into every interaction, every invitation, every gesture that Adrian allowed himself to make. "Don't fall in love," he said once, in a conversation that had begun innocently enough in his study the following night. They had been discussing art acquisitions, the latest renovation of his private gallery, the rare first edition books he collected, as if he were trying to preserve the souls of their authors. His eyes, though dark and unreadable, flickered with a fleeting warmth whenever he discussed his passions, a stark contrast to the ironclad rule he imposed upon every person who entered his orbit. "It complicates everything," he added simply, and she believed him, even as a spark ignited somewhere deep in her chest that defied all caution. Isabella, whose life had been a series of measured risks and calculated leaps, felt herself teetering at the edge of something vast, a world where beauty, money, and desire intertwined dangerously. She knew falling for him would be reckless, catastrophic even. Yet something about the way he looked at her, sharp, curious, cautious, made it almost impossible not to. Days turned into weeks, and Isabella found herself navigating the labyrinthine layers of Adrian's life with a mixture of awe and trepidation. His mansion, sprawling and cold to the touch despite its opulent warmth, became a place where secrets lived in every corner. Bookshelves were lined with first editions, leather spines glowing faintly under soft lighting. Artwork hung in precise formations that suggested both aesthetic mastery and obsessive control. Yet it was the man himself who fascinated her most. Behind the veneer of perfection, behind the wealth, the rules, and the luxury, there was a pulse of loneliness she could almost see in the way he moved, the way he allowed her to exist beside him in brief, precious moments. Their conversations, initially polite, technical even, began to unravel into fragments of vulnerability. He shared details of his childhood in a sprawling villa in the south of France, of parents whose expectations had weighed on him like anchors, of siblings who had been either too distant or too opportunistic. Isabella listened, her reporter instincts sharpening. Yet every detail she uncovered seemed to pull her closer into a gravity she knew she could not escape. The first time he broke his own rule, subtly, was during a storm. She had come to his estate late, soaked and shivering from the rain, her temper flaring from the traffic and the relentless drizzle. Adrian, who had been reading in his study, did not rise. He simply handed her a towel, a gesture so small, so deceptively mundane, that it carried the weight of the unspoken rule being bent, even just slightly. "You're wet," he said, his voice low, controlled, yet threaded with something that made her stomach flip. There was no lecture, no admonition, just presence, just acknowledgement. And in that moment, the world of contracts, wealth, and social expectation dissolved around them, leaving only two human beings, so close that the scent of his cologne and the faint tongue of rain clinging to her hair became the center of her universe. She realized then, with the cruel clarity of inevitability, that Adrian LaVelle could be the most dangerous man she would ever meet. Not because of power or money, but because he was utterly, profoundly untouchable, and she wanted to touch him anyway. Their courtship, if it could be called that, was a careful dance along the edges of temptation and restraint. He invited her to charity galas, private yacht parties, and exclusive auctions not as a lover but as a companion, a presence that added something she could not quite name to his meticulously curated world. She watched the way he operated, commanding rooms with effortless precision, negotiating million-dollar deals with the same intensity he applied to the smallest interactions with her. And always, in the back of her mind, was the rule: do not fall in love. The words were an unspoken chord between them, taut and invisible, threatening to snap at any moment. Yet the human heart, as Isabella discovered, is rarely obedient. It has its own rules, and hers were being rewritten line by line, glance by glance, touch by touch. It was during a winter gala, the first snow of the season glistening outside the towering glass windows of his penthouse, that the inevitability could no longer be denied. She had been covering the event for a luxury magazine, her professional detachment strained by the intensity of proximity to Adrian. As they moved through the crowd, she caught him watching her with an expression that made her pulse quicken, a mix of curiosity, admiration, and something she dared not name aloud. Later, when they were alone on the balcony, the city lights sparkling like distant stars below them, she finally asked the question that had been burning in her chest since the first evening she entered his orbit. "Why me?" she whispered. "Out of everyone, why do you let me in?" His answer was slow, deliberate, and devastating in its simplicity. "Because you don't see me for what I am. You see me, just me." It was the first time he had admitted vulnerability, the first crack in the armor that had guarded him so fiercely. She understood immediately that the rule was not just about preventing love, it was about protection, about controlling chaos, about maintaining a universe he could manage without it collapsing under the weight of desire. Yet desire was insidious. They began spending longer hours together, ostensibly to discuss business acquisitions or art investments. But the lines between professional and personal blurred. He showed her rare manuscripts, taking her hand lightly to turn a fragile page. He guided her through private gardens in his estate, explaining the history of exotic flora with quiet reverence. She began to notice subtle habits, the way he paused before entering a room, the slight relaxation of his shoulders when she laughed, the way his eyes softened at her questions, not the sharp, calculating gaze of a businessman, but the curious, tender gaze of a man discovering something he feared might be forbidden. Each instance was a violation of his own rule, and each one drew her closer, tethering her heart with invisible threads she could not resist. The first kiss, when it came, was nothing like she had imagined. It was accidental and almost imperceptible brush of lips when he handed her a rare first edition she had admired too long. Yet in that instant, time fractured. She felt the pulse of his rule, the gravity of his warning, the weight of consequences, and simultaneously, a wild, uncontrollable thrill that surged through her. He pulled back instantly, his hand still warm around hers, eyes dark with a mix of regret and wonder. "I told you," he murmured. "One rule." She did not answer. Words felt inadequate. Actions were forbidden. All she could do was stare into eyes that had already ensnared her heart. Weeks turned into months, and the tension between rule and impulse grew unbearable. They attended society events together, navigated boardrooms, dined in exclusive restaurants, yet every stolen moment, every fleeting touch carried the risk of transgression. Isabella began to understand that love in Adrian's world was not a simple exchange of feelings, it was a negotiation, a delicate operation with stakes higher than anything she had ever encountered. And yet, the forbidden nature of it made her crave it more fiercely. She found herself lingering in his study, pretending to research art acquisitions, just to feel the proximity of his presence. She began noticing small gestures, the brush of his fingers against hers when passing documents, the quiet smile he allowed when she recounted a story from her childhood, the rare moment when he let his guard down during a snowfall in the estate's gardens. Each instance was a violation of his own rule, and each one drew her closer, tethering her heart with invisible threads she could not resist. The winter stretched into spring, and with it, the invisible threads between Isabella and Adrian tightened in ways neither could fully resist. Each encounter carried the weight of unspoken rules and unacknowledged desires. He invited her into his private library one late evening, ostensibly to examine a newly acquired rare manuscript, but as she leaned over the table, eyes tracing delicate ink lines, she felt the heat of his body behind her, the faint pressure of his hand brushing against hers. He didn't move away, not immediately. His presence hovered, authoritative yet tentative, and she felt a dangerous thrill in the nearness, the forbidden intimacy. They spoke little, but the silence was charged with more meaning than any words could convey. Isabella knew then that every rule he imposed was not a barrier but a challenge, a line drawn to be tested, to be crossed, to see if she would follow, if she would stay. As the months passed, Isabella began to understand the mechanisms of Adrian's life with an intimacy that terrified her. She watched him at board meetings, a flawless mask of precision and control, negotiating millions with a calm that belied the storm of emotions she could now sense beneath the surface. She witnessed the intensity of his work, the long hours, the tireless planning, and she began to see the cost of wealth, not in money or material, but in solitude, in sacrifices made in the name of power. Yet with her, he allowed fragments of humanity to leak through. The rare laugh that escaped when she made a clever remark, the fleeting softness when she caught him off guard, the gentle touch that lingered longer than protocol allowed. Each act was a defiance of his own rule, a crack in the armor of the man who demanded love stay at bay. And each act drew her deeper, binding her heart in ways she could neither rationalize nor resist. One afternoon, as cherry blossoms drifted like pink snow around the estate, Adrian took her to the edge of his private garden. The air smelled of wet earth and roses, intoxicating in its simplicity. He handed her a small, unassuming book of poetry, its pages worn and delicate. "Read it," he said softly, eyes never leaving hers. As she whispered the lines aloud, he reached for her hand, and the world contracted to the space between their fingers. "You see me," he murmured, echoing words from months earlier. "Not the empire, not the reputation, not the money. You see me." She swallowed the sudden lump in her throat, aware that he was relinquishing control in a way he had never allowed himself with anyone. That the one rule, never fall in love, was beginning to falter in the presence of her unwavering gaze. Their clandestine romance deepened, tempered by the constant awareness of risk. A stolen touch in the hallway, a lingering glance across an opulent gala, a whispered word late at night in his vast, dimly lit office, all these moments became their currency, a way to communicate feelings that words could never fully capture. Isabella began keeping meticulous notes in her mind, cataloging these brief encounters, savoring each one like a rare vintage wine. Yet the thrill of secrecy carried its own tension. Every day she wondered if she would overstep, if she would push him to reveal a vulnerability he had protected so fiercely for decades. Each smile, each subtle gesture of intimacy became an act of daring, an experiment in trust and courage. The first true confrontation came unexpectedly. During a spring evening at a charity gala, she had worn a gown that shimmered faintly under the chandelier lights. Adrian approached, expression unreadable, but the tension radiating from him was palpable. They were surrounded by socialites, journalists, and influencers, yet the noise around them dissolved. His voice, low and firm, reached her alone. "You're breaking my rules." The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of a warning she could not ignore. She looked up at him, heart racing, and said, "Maybe your rules are wrong." His eyes darkened, stormy and conflicted. For a moment, he wavered, a crack forming in the fortress he had built around his heart. "And maybe I'm afraid," he admitted quietly, startling her. "Afraid of losing control, afraid of everything I can't protect." That evening, in the midst of glittering chandeliers and clinking glasses, he let himself be vulnerable for the first time, revealing a fear as human as her own longing. Their bond intensified over the following weeks, each encounter more charged than the last. Adrian began allowing Isabella glimpses into his private world, inviting her to witness boardroom negotiations, introducing her to key advisors, letting her into his private art collection with stories behind each piece. In return, Isabella shared fragments of her own life, revealing her fears, her dreams, and the parts of her heart she had long protected from the world. Each shared secret, each intimate moment, brought them closer, eroding the rule that had governed his life for so long. Yet danger loomed in every corner as the world outside continued to judge, speculate, and covet, threatening to expose the forbidden intimacy they had cultivated. One rainy night, as lightning streaked across the city skyline visible from his penthouse, Adrian invited her into his private study, the room bathed in soft, amber light. She watched him move around the room, poring over documents, yet she sensed an uncharacteristic vulnerability. Finally, he turned, eyes locking on hers, and said, "I can't keep pretending this rule exists." The declaration, simple as it was, shattered the carefully constructed barriers between them. She stepped closer, heart pounding, and whispered, "Then don't." The ensuing kiss was electric, urgent, the culmination of months of tension and restraint. In that moment, the rule ceased to matter. The only truth was the connection that had been building in secret, fragile yet undeniable. The aftermath of breaking the rule was chaotic, exhilarating, and terrifying. Their relationship, once defined by subtle gestures and secretive glances, became a storm of emotions. Adrian struggled with his fear of vulnerability and the consequences of letting someone see beyond the carefully curated persona. Isabella grappled with the reality of falling for a man whose life was governed by influence, wealth, and power, and the possibility that the intensity of their love could be weaponized against her. Yet, despite the risks, neither could resist the gravity drawing them together. Their passion, once carefully measured, now became raw and consuming, each encounter blurring the lines between desire, affection, and dependence. The revelation of their romance inevitably drew attention. Rumors spread among social circles, whispers traveled through media outlets, and questions arose about the compatibility of a journalist and a billionaire. Adrian faced scrutiny from investors, advisors, and family members who feared that emotional entanglements could compromise his empire. Isabella, meanwhile, navigated the delicate balance between her professional integrity and personal vulnerability, aware that every glance, every gesture, every word could be scrutinized and misinterpreted. Yet through it all, their bond strengthened, a testament to the resilience of a connection forged under pressure, secrecy, and undeniable attraction. Summer brought with it a series of trials that tested the limits of their relationship. A hostile corporate takeover threatened to destabilize Adrian's empire, forcing him to devote every ounce of attention to crisis management. Simultaneously, Isabella faced scrutiny from her editors, who questioned the ethics of her reporting and the impartiality of her coverage. Yet even amid chaos, they found moments of intimacy, quiet breakfasts in his penthouse kitchen, whispered conversations on private terraces overlooking the city, letters left in hidden corners of his office expressing love, regret, longing, and hope. These acts, small but profound, reinforced the fragile yet unbreakable bond they had cultivated against a backdrop of rules, expectations, and societal pressures. One pivotal evening, as autumn leaves fell in fiery cascades outside his estate, Adrian invited Isabella to the private gallery he had been restoring for months. The space, filled with rare paintings, sculptures, and artifacts, seemed almost sacred in its quiet grandeur. He led her to a small alcove where a single chair awaited. "Sit," he commanded gently, his tone leaving no room for refusal. He then revealed a hidden collection of letters, journals, and personal artifacts, documents that chronicled not just his professional achievements, but the depths of his personal journey, fears, regrets, and triumphs. Isabella read them, one by one, absorbing the man behind the empire, the vulnerability beneath the wealth, and the profound loneliness that had shaped his rule. Tears blurred her vision as she realized the weight he had carried, the sacrifices made in the name of control, and the courage required to allow someone into that private world. By winter, their relationship had evolved into a complex dance of desire, trust, and understanding. They had fallen deeply in love, in spite of the rule, in defiance of the expectations imposed upon them by wealth, society, and the meticulous control Adrian had maintained over his life. The rule, once an unyielding boundary, had become a testament to the power of human connection, revealing that love, when genuine, could transcend fear, control, and even the most meticulously constructed barriers. Their days were a blend of ordinary and extraordinary moments, sharing morning coffee on private terraces, navigating high-stakes negotiations in boardrooms, exploring art collections, attending galas, and writing letters to each other in the quiet intimacy of their private spaces. Each act reinforced their bond, a delicate equilibrium of passion, respect, and shared humanity. The climax of their journey came one evening as spring rain fell once more, when Adrian faced a personal and professional crisis that threatened to unravel not just his empire but the fragile trust he had cultivated with Isabella. A critical merger teetered on the edge of collapse. Investors questioned his judgment, and the media speculated about his personal life. Amid the chaos, Isabella stood by his side, offering insight, encouragement, and unwavering support. In a decisive moment, Adrian chose to reveal their love publicly, acknowledging the profound impact Isabella had had on his life, both personally and professionally. The declaration, made in the face of scrutiny, criticism, and risk, solidified their bond, proving that the connection they had nurtured in secrecy was powerful enough to withstand the pressures of wealth, expectation, and societal judgment. In the aftermath, the world adjusted to their union. Critics remained, rumors persisted, and challenges arose. But Adrian and Isabella navigated these obstacles with a shared understanding of trust, love, and respect. They continued to explore the depths of their relationship, blending their worlds of luxury, influence, and human vulnerability. The rule, once unyielding and absolute, became a reminder of the courage required to embrace love in its purest form, a recognition that genuine connection could defy even the most rigid boundaries. Years later, as they stood together on a balcony overlooking a city that had both celebrated and scrutinized them, Isabella reflected on the journey that had brought them there. From the first evening in the LaVelle estate courtyard to the clandestine moments in studies, gardens, and galleries, every step had been a negotiation of desire, trust, and risk. Adrian, standing beside her, no longer merely a figure of authority and wealth, but a man profoundly human, smiled softly. "Do you regret breaking the rule?" he asked, his tone teasing yet sincere. She shook her head, leaning into him, feeling the warmth and solidity of the man who had once been untouchable. "Not for a second," she whispered. "Because love like this, it's worth every rule, every risk, every challenge." He nodded, pressing a gentle kiss to her temple. And for the first time in their shared journey, the weight of expectation and rule seemed irrelevant. All that remained was the undeniable truth they had forged together, that love, once found, could defy even the most formidable boundaries. In the end, the rule had been broken, the boundaries crossed, and the love between Isabella and Adrian had emerged stronger, unshakable, and profound. Wealth, power, and expectation were reduced to background, irrelevant to the human connection they had cultivated through patience, courage, and undeniable chemistry. They continued to live in a world of luxury and influence, yet it was not the opulence or prestige that defined them, but the bond that had survived secrecy, rule, and risk. And in that bond, Isabella and Adrian discovered the greatest truth of all, that genuine love, once embraced, could overcome fear, transcend rules, and endure beyond any challenge the world could impose.